Hello and welcome back to this introduction to TrailSync. What we're going to go through in this video is setting up a trip. We're going to start off with a fairly basic trip, and so this is just going to give you the hang of getting a trip together and what the basic features and functionalities of creating a trip are. So from the home screen, we're going to create a new trip. The trip name is going to be Mirror Lake, and so this is on Mount Hood. We can add a little bit of a description or some notes. In this case, we'll say meet at the trailhead at 8:30. It's a pretty busy trailhead, so it's good to get there early, and we'll leave the date as the date that's already there, and then it goes off and it creates the trip for you. So now we have the basics of the trip and what you can do with the trip from a planning perspective. Trips have statuses. We're in the planning mode at the moment. We'll go a lot more into the other modes in later videos. Hunter is the organizer of the trip. We can invite other folks, and so in this instance we are going to invite another TrailSync member. They can be a participant or an observer, and we'll talk a little bit more about observers later on. So at this point we have a pending invitation on another screen. The other member is going to accept the trip, and then they will be part of this trip. So we now have two people who are working together to plan the trip. The most basic part of the trip is the route planning. And so we go into the route planning screen, and here we put the Mirror Lake Trailhead. That's in Oregon, and so we just search for that. If you're familiar with that trailhead, you'll recognize where we are in Government Camp. And we can add a couple of waypoints. Again, we'll talk a little bit more in detail about waypoints later on, but if you click on the screen, you'll get a start waypoint, and then you'll get other waypoints as you go through. If you're doing an out and back route, you can quickly say you just want to return to start, and it will automatically just copy the route back from the beginning to the trailhead. You can see the distance is automatically calculated, the elevation. We've also got a standard profile, elevation profile, so you can see whether or not the hike is what you expect it to be. You can see the route segments and the distance between the route segments. And this is where waypoints become important. And if you tap on a waypoint, you can change the type of the waypoint. We're not going to go into detail on these at the moment. Start and end are fairly straightforward. The waypoint type is really just a navigation aid, and then you can set up other waypoints such as a campsite or where you're going to get water. And we'll talk about those in a later video. So now that we've got the route done, we can add gear. We can use the templates we created earlier just to quickly add gear for the trip. We're going to use the My Overnight Backpack template. We can apply that, and then that gear is automatically part of that trip. It's already been assigned to Hunter because he added it, but we can change those assignments as necessary. And so I can just select any one of those items and reassign that piece of gear to another member of the team. You can see who has got what assignment, what the total amount of gear is for that person, what the weight of that gear is. So you really get a good idea whether the equipment is sort of balanced between the different people who are participating in the trip. You can also make sure all the gear is assigned, and so that there's no gear that's not assigned. Everybody knows who's carrying what. And for gear that you're actually wearing or as consumables, you can mark it as being excluded from the weight calculations, and that's just so that you can get an accurate idea of the overall weight. So just like gear, we can also add meals to the trip. If it's a multi-day trip, we see the meals for each day. Again, we can add from the meals that we created earlier. We can also decide how many servings that we need of that type of meal. So for the participants who are there, we can make sure we have enough food for the entire group. We can assign it to a person so we know who's carrying it and who's responsible for having that meal. As we continue the planning of the trip, we can set action items and messages, and these really help people collaborate together so everyone's on the same page. Action item may be something like we need a permit, we need a snowpark pass, so we can set that up there. We can give it a priority, and we can assign it to one of the team members, one of the participants. they will see that as an action item that they then can complete, and we'll see that a little bit later. So in addition to action items, we can also have messages, so everything is in one place. Just like typical instant messaging, you can send messages to the group. In this instance, we're just going to say, hey, looks like we're all ready to go. Let's make sure we meet there at 8:30 and send that off to the group, and then that's received by all the group participants. They can reply to that, and then you've got all the information about the hike in one place. You can also record all the expenses for the trip under the budget, and so if you've got some hike-related expenses, you can add those. So maybe the snow pass you bought specifically for this hike, you can add that. It knows who you are, and so it also will add up all the expenses for each person, and then just split them between the group so that you know who owes what at the end of the hike. Finally, you can upload permits, and so this can either be an image of the permit or a PDF of the permit if that's necessary for the hike. You may still need the paper copy dependent on what the land manager requires, but at least you've got this available. Finally, you can create a trip report, which is just a summary of the entire trip that you can then see what the itinerary is, what the gear is, what the meals are, what the meal plan is, the expenses, and all the information all in one place for the entire trip. So now if we log on as the other participant, so now we're not the organizer but the participant, we'll get to be able to see all that information that's been entered for the trip. We see that it's the Mirror Lake trip, that there are action items and there are messages pending. I added a new action item here. Can you bring some microspikes? Because it's going to look a little bit icy. You can see who the participants are. So Hunter organized the trip and I was logged on here as avid hiker. I can see the 2 action items that have been added. I can only complete my action item. I can not edit or complete anybody else's action item. I can see the messages, and we can exchange more messages as necessary. I can see the gear that's been assigned to me and what the weight of that gear is. And I can do my own gear assignment as well. So the purpose here is that this is a collaborative planning tool. Then I can see what the route is that we've got. And again, we could collaborate around the route and move waypoints, etc. Okay, so in this video, we've really shown you how to create the initial plan for a trip. What we'll move on to in the next video is how to actually execute that trip and get out and have fun hiking.